Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. My family has owned a large plot of land in the countryside for over 200 years. It's mostly forest, with a small clearing in the middle where my great-great-grandfather built a little cabin. That cabin has been passed down through the generations and holds tremendous sentimental value for me. As a kid, I have vivid memories of visiting the property with my dad and spending weekends camping and hiking through the woods. The peace and tranquility of being surrounded by those towering pines was something I'll never forget. Even as an adult living in the city, I make it a point to visit the cabin at least a few times a year. The land is well off the beaten path, and I never had any issues with trespassers or anything. That suddenly changed last month when I arrived for a weekend visit. As I drove down the long dirt road leading to the cabin, I noticed fresh tire tracks that didn't belong to my truck. I had a bad feeling in my gut when I pulled up to find several bulldozers and construction equipment tearing down trees near the cabin. I jumped out of my truck and ran over to the nearest guy operating a chainsaw. "What the hell are you doing? This is my property!" I yelled. The guy turned off the chainsaw and gave me a confused look. "Sorry, buddy, but we're just following orders. This land belongs to ABC Construction now." My blood was boiling. How could they claim to own my family's land that had been with us for generations? I demanded to see proof, and the guy radioed his foreman to come talk to me. A gruff, arrogant-looking foreman strode over. "I'm going to need you to leave. This is private property owned by ABC Construction. We have all the legal paperwork." I was fuming. "That's impossible. My family has owned this land for over 200 years. I want to see this so-called paperwork." The foreman hesitated before handing me a folder with documents showing the land was recently purchased by their company. But I noticed something was off about the seller's signature on the deed transfer. It looked nothing like my handwriting or my dad's. "This is forged!" I yelled. "I never sold this land, and neither did my father. You people are criminally trespassing and destroying my property." The foreman scoffed. "Not my problem, buddy. We bought this land legally according to this deed. Take it up with whoever sold it to us if you have an issue. Now, I suggest you get lost before I have you arrested for trespassing." I was seeing red at this point. I got right up in the foreman's face and said through gritted teeth, "I am not leaving my own family's property. You are the trespassers here. I'm calling the sheriff." The foreman just laughed arrogantly, clearly not taking me seriously. But I followed through and called the local sheriff, who I actually knew pretty well. I explained the situation, and he said he'd be right over. In the meantime, I refused to let the construction workers do any more damage to my property. A few of the foreman's goons tried intimidating me into backing off, but I stood my ground. No way was I letting these crooks illegally destroy generations of my family's legacy. When the sheriff arrived with 2 deputies in tow, I showed them the forged deed transfer papers. They immediately recognized something was fishy and questioned the foreman about it. The arrogant jerk still insisted they legally owned the land, but his smugness faded as the sheriff pressed him for details about the purchase. Sensing his bluff had been called, the foreman changed his tune and said their company president had handled all the paperwork, and he was just following orders to begin clearing the land. One of the deputies handcuffed the foreman, while the sheriff went to talk to the workers to get to the bottom of this scam. In the end, the sheriff was able to determine the construction company had been swindled by a con artist. Some scammer had forged documents and posed as me in order to sell the land to the company president for a hefty profit. The police arrested the foreman and got the construction crews to leave. But the damage was already done. Those criminals had destroyed over 4 acres of my family's historic forest before I caught them in the act. I was devastated to see the centuries-old trees ruthlessly cut down and cleared away. The cabin was thankfully unscathed, but the woods surrounding it would never be the same. I consulted a lawyer and took the construction company to court for illegal trespass, destruction of property, and emotional distress. My lawyer was able to prove their negligence in verifying the legitimacy of the land purchase and made a solid case for hefty damages. In the end, the judge sided completely with me. He fined the construction company $200,000, which I donated to conservation efforts to replant trees in protected parks. The president and foreman also got slapped with criminal charges for the scam and had to pay me $300,000 in damages. While the money was some consolation, it could never make up for losing those acres of family heritage. but I used some of the money to clear away the downed trees and make the area nice again around the cabin. I decided to plant a new generation of trees, which I hope someday my children can enjoy just as much as I did as a kid. The company also agreed to pay for security measures like cameras and fencing to prevent any future incidents. I'm just glad I caught those crooks in the act when I did, or else they might have destroyed everything. It was a painful lesson in protecting my property rights. But in the end, justice was served. I only wish I could get back those 200-year-old trees that meant so much to me and my ancestors who lived on that land. At least future generations can continue enjoying the rebuilt forest, even if it won't be quite the same. The next one is a pro-revenge story. When I was in my early 20s, trying to make it in the world and just starting out, I reported to a senior sales team as a junior salesperson. It was essentially a support role, and I knew my place. Watch, stay quiet, learn, and help them. I reported to a lady who was considered mid-level, and the senior guy who was the head of sales. I was green, and while I was seeking mentorship and periodically asking for advice to improve how I could support them, they mistook it for incompetence. It was simple things, like learning what format each of them preferred for their daily reports and tasks they had to do. I also had an issue because the senior guy basically stole my first bonus at the 3-month mark. It was a tiny amount to him, but a lot for young me. I didn't officially complain, but asked him about how he was able to keep my bonus when it was obvious it tracked back to my efforts on the data. He didn't like that, and didn't pay me. I was doing a good job. I'm fully aware of my skills. But with the explanation, "It's just not working out," they fired me a few weeks later. I spent a couple of months getting a new job, which turned out to be an amazing smaller firm where I was appreciated, mentored correctly, and thrived. The new firm was very successful. They brought me into a room, the two of them, and fired me. She was the one who said, "It's just not working out," and he said, "So we're letting you go," even to my question as to why, since from the beginning I had been doing well. About 2 years later, after I'd become a vital but still junior part of the smaller company, my former firm closed up in the region and put everyone out of work. So I saw through the glass while walking by the boardroom one day that the senior guy who stole my bonus was being interviewed for a job at my current firm. My current superiors didn't see me walk by, but my old boss and I made eye contact. Now, in a small sales team at a small firm, it's important to have a nice working relationship and trust. There are also a lot of selfish salespeople who are there to make money and don't like being ripped off. So later that afternoon, I quietly mentioned to the one boss, "I saw X in the office today when I walked by. I used to work for him. That a-hole stole my bonus one time." It was all I needed to say because the last thing my current boss needed was a person who'd do that on our team. Then times got tough, and I know that man spent 2 years looking for work. 6 or 7 years later, I was at a new company in a more senior role, and the one lady who I originally reported to called me and was selling at a new firm, and she was calling to ask if I'd be interested in purchasing from her. I didn't know she had started working there. The firm she was with was selling something that was very basic, and interchangeable with competing firms. She'd gone from selling important things to selling a nothing product after the original firm closed. She acted all happy and nice to me, and recalled the great job I did when we worked together. I also knew she didn't want to be talking to me, but her call log said she had to call. I told her thanks and to send me an official quote and proposal, several hours of work for her. In the industry we were in, she was paid not only on new sales but on a net sales measurement, meaning she had to retain clients as well as bring in new ones. I had a lot of commitment at the firm she was now at. While she spent her afternoon drafting a proposal, I spent a couple of hours pulling all my business from that company and substituting it with a competitor up the street. She emailed me a full proposal and mentioned she was excited to be working with me again and supporting my business. She had no idea yet that I'd just pulled everything, and she would never receive a bonus this year because of the size of the amount I pulled. The next day, she emailed me quite upset and had CC'd her boss, whom I've known for years and had a good working relationship with. I replied to all and thanked her and said I'd decided to go with a competitor because it just won't work out as I find your approach to business dealings to be insincere. Her boss emailed me back directly and asked what happened, and I replied that I just don't think she is a sincere person. My business to their firm was worth more than her job, and she didn't last more than a month there after that. The next one is a petty revenge story. I have 2 sisters, and anyone with sisters knows how bad the clothes stealing can get. I regularly had to go through their rooms to get my clothes and shoes back, and if I tried to bring it up, I'd get in trouble for going through their rooms, while the fact that they had obviously gone through my room to steal my stuff was completely ignored. I would have liked to return the favor by stealing their stuff, but they are both very tiny, and I've always been the heavier sibling, and even my feet were much bigger than theirs. So while they could stuff some tissues into the toes of my shoes and wear them, I couldn't fit my toe into either of their shoes. Lately, I've been getting this rash on the back of my neck, so I went to the doctor and he said it was eczema and prescribed a cream for it. Well, I got the cream and it said on the tube in big letters, athlete's foot cream. I checked with the doctor and he said that was the generic for the eczema cream. Well, I happen to remember there being a little problem with athlete's foot when my older siblings started middle school, and I remember what an absolute nightmare it was to deal with, so no one ever wanted a repeat incident. So I put my shoes away in my room and waited. Sure enough, my sister stole a pair of my shoes to wear. When I saw her wearing them, I didn't get mad. I just told her to put them back where she found them when she was done. She agreed, and I grabbed the cream and set it right on top of the shelf where I keep my shoes. She freaked out, and they left my shoes alone, and I still have eczema, so I always keep the cream in the same place. They still steal my clothes all the time, but at least my shoes are safe. The next one is a malicious compliance story. This happened about 5 years ago, but the memory came back to me as I was driving to work. I, 17F at the time, was in my senior year of high school. I was an AP kid, meaning that I took nearly all AP classes, college-level courses for high schoolers, during my last 2 years of high school. I really didn't want to be drowning in homework, though, so I opted to take General English in 11th and 12th grade, despite the many pleas of my teachers. I did take honors English in 9th and 10th grade, though. I just didn't care enough about the subject to do all that extra work, even though I was smart enough to do it. That being said, my 12th grade English teacher really liked me because I was respectful, but not a kiss-ass, and I actually did the work and didn't do the bare minimum. She was cool, albeit a bit quirky, like neon yellow and teal split-dye hair on a 52-year-old woman. But she had a rule of no swearing, mostly because of the whole, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile mindset all teens have. I wasn't bothered by it because I didn't swear much, but she made it a big deal. Remember that for later. Now let's get to the actual malicious compliance. As a final project of sorts for the class, we had to make a memory box of our high school experience, and then we would all present our boxes to the class. We had to write letters to our past selves, have trinkets that represent each year, projects we were proud of, etc. One of the things we needed was a quote from a book we've read in our English classes that remind us of each year. Remember how I said I took honor English in the 10th grade? Well, that's the year that honors students, and only honors students, read my favorite book, Catcher in the Rye. I love the writing style. I know Holden is insufferable. If you don't know the book, the main character has an existential crisis over the corruption of the youth and purity and other stuff. In one scene, he sees "Duck You" written in a school stairwell in a kid's handwriting, and he freaks out. Admittedly, I was struggling with my mental health a lot in high school, specifically in the 11th grade, so I thought a quote where the character has life throw a big "duck you" in your face was an appropriate summary. I checked with my teacher, not once, not twice, but 3 times, to make sure any book we read in our English classes was fine. She was definitely suspicious and knew I was going to do something. I'm sure she thought I'd do a call-out on my peers or something that was a bit of a controversy in its commentary, but I was a goody one-shoe, not fully a two-shoes kind of person, but I definitely was not breaking rules, so she wasn't worried. The rest of the story should be pretty clear now. When it was my turn to present, I showed off my trinkets and letters and monologue, and then it got to the quotes. I did my 9th and 10th grade quotes, and then I paused. I was worried if I should back out. But then I thought about when the next time I'd be able to boldly say those 2 words in front of a group of people with undivided attention again, so I took my moment and read my quote. It felt like one of those "and everybody clapped" moments. The class went crazy. Like the kids that never did a single assignment were on their feet cheering. The track and field kids were laughing and sharing "oh my gods" with each other. Everyone was definitely paying attention now, and there was so much commotion that it took quite a few minutes to calm down. Keep in mind, for everyone else, the smart good girl just broke the teacher's biggest rule in a hyper-public way. This was a jaw-dropping moment for 17-year-olds. I quickly finished my last quote and hurried back to my seat. A couple of kids dapped me up on my short walk, but the teacher looked pissed. I don't remember what happened afterward. I'm pretty sure she said something disapproving and moved on. After class, I knew I had to apologize to the teacher, and she did say she was disappointed, but that she also couldn't do anything about it because I was just doing the assignment, and I did ask several times beforehand. She kind of gave me a smirk when she said it as she realized how deviously calculated it was while still adhering to the rubric. I didn't get in any trouble and got full points on the assignment. It made me smile remembering this story. Hope you do too. The next one is an entitled people story. My husband and I had decided to rent out one of our empty bedrooms for a few months, as we are empty nesters and thought the extra cash would come in handy. We posted an ad and found what we thought was a suitable renter. His 2-week stay ended this past Sunday and was an absolute train wreck. The players in this melodrama are below, along with bullet points leading up to last weekend. T =, my husband J =, renter, M =, very good friend, who is very protective of me. Within 4 days of moving in, J had gone through all of the soda I had put in the fridge that would normally last T and me more than a week, along with a jumbo box of microwave popcorn, our stash of frozen emergency meals, and a few other items. He swore he would pay us for these items when he received his weekly check. Spoiler alert, he never did. When Jay told us he did not have a car, M said he was willing to sell his beach cruiser for $50. T offered to pay for it, and Jay and I went to M's home to pick it up, and also so that M could meet Jay and put the fear of God, or at least of M, into him. Jay kept asking us to do things like pay for an Uber. Hard no from us. Calling M and asking him for money, Ubers, and rides. Again, hard no. M lives 20 miles from us and is a full-time caretaker for his disabled partner, and asking us to buy him food. T had a mandatory qualification event for his job and needed to pay $20 for supplies. Totally normal for his industry. He made sure to have the cash in his wallet, but when he went to pay, the money was gone. Jay kept saying that his employer was cutting his hours and then giving them back. He was a bit iffy when we asked what his work schedule was. The poop really started to hit the fan on Friday morning. At around 1 o'clock, T's phone started to blow up. T works nights but happened to be home with a stomach bug. It was Jay texting that he had been roughed up and was scared. T ignored his texts. We're Jay's landlords, not his parents or even his friends. To summarize the next 3 days, Jay came home with some sob story about being beat up by some bad gangbanger types who stole the bicycle. He lied that he had been on his way home from work as our ring system saw him leaving the house 2 hours before. Jay's cousin came by Friday evening to pick him up. The next time we heard from Jay was Saturday morning when he told us he had lost his house keys while riding in an Uber. Jay came by the house with his cousin for a few minutes before I had the chance to get new keys made. We told Jay in plain English that we had an event to go to that night, concert tickets, and would be leaving the house at 3:45 and would not be back until 11 that night. He still expected us to detour 10 miles in the wrong direction to give him the replacement keys. Just no. I dropped T off at the house at 11 and left to put gas in my car and pick up a snack for TJ called while I was out, asking me to pay a bar tab. Again, no. When I got home, I texted Jay that T would be going to bed at 12:30. If Jay couldn't make it home before then, we would see him on Sunday. Jay did come in at some point before T went to bed. When I got home on Sunday, Jay, obviously either drunk or hungover, told yet another sob story about how the bar he had been at had kept his phone when he didn't have the cash to pay his $40 tab. He wanted me to pay the tab as he had no cash and swore he would Zelle me the money as soon as he had his phone as his boss had paid him that morning. I reluctantly agreed to retrieve his phone on the condition that the first thing he would do when he got it was Zelle me the money. I paid the tab at the dive he had been at and was out of there in under 5 minutes. I gave Jay no time to order a beer, which pissed him off. When I gave Jay his phone and said he needed to send me the money immediately as agreed, he said his boss needed to release his pay before he could give me the money. Spoiler alert again, that never happened. Next, Jay asked to stop at an inexpensive Mexican fast food place, not a chain, to get a burrito. I said I would wait in the car while he went inside and he got his order to go. He ended up walking into the full-service Mex place next door, one with a bar. At that point, I hit the bloody end of my rope. I called M, who went into hyper-protective mode and drove straight down to me. M ended up yanking Jay out of the latest bar, where he admitted in front of the bartender he had no money to pay the tab, and had just expected they would let him walk out on it. After some talk between MT and myself, M took Jay to a relative's house about 30 miles away, while T and I cleared out his room and put his belongings on the curb, then notified Jay we had done so. His bathroom was in unspeakable shape, and we had to pay our cleaning service $150 to do an emergency cleaning. We also paid $400 to have our locks rekeyed and change the access code for our security system. Jay spent some time making wild threats. He tried to call cops multiple times, but they kept shutting him down as he was very obviously drunk and out of control. We also found out that Jay had used the bicycle as collateral to pay off another open bar tab, that he was beat up on Thursday night, Friday morning by a Vago, very bad biker dude, because Jay was flirting with the guy's girlfriend and that his boss had fired him for showing up drunk and stealing. There's a ton more, but this post is already too long. I actually hope Jay gets the help he so desperately needs and that I never lay eyes on him again. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.